right, we'll call to order this
Hold on.
meeting.
Give me a
Whoop.
second, it's not totally live.
Okay,
It's previewed. Now we're live, go.
we'll call to order this meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education on July 19th. Let the record show that all members are present, and we will have an opportunity for audience or public comment.
Hello. Hello. Okay, this first one is from Becky Crook.
Hold on just a second, Miss Bailey. I'm not sure you picked up.
Yeah, I gotta turn the rest of you down before I do that. All right, now go.
Good now?
Yep.
Okay. I want to bring up a question for the board. When school starts back, can we propose that deaf and hard of hearing, or DHH, teachers who've been vaccinated not have to wear masks when teaching DHH kids? The window masks are not effective due to fogging and glare. Reese, my 5th grader at Northside Elementary, has already expressed difficulty and anxiety about getting info needed when she goes back to school and whether or not she will have to deal with masks. The governor himself said that we don't have to wear masks when talking to DHH citizens. This should especially apply to our children in a learning setting. They already have enough to overcome without that huge obstacle. Please let me know if you need anything from me. I'm happy to discuss further with anyone as needed and will answer any questions. Thank you as always for hearing our concerns and facilitating them to decision makers. Betty Crook. Melanie Coyle, Woodford County Board of Education. I'm requesting that the board fully support and approve lacrosse as a varsity sport at Woodford County High School. My hope is that KHSAA will sanction lacrosse for this upcoming season. Regardless of KHSAA's decision, Woodford County should move forward with approving lacrosse as a varsity sport. Several area schools have already transitioned lacrosse to a school-offered spring sport. There are many students who are already participating in lacrosse in Woodford County, and it is well developed. These kids deserve the support of the athletic department and of the board to further grow and compete. Thank you all for your time and dedication to Woodford County. Sincerely, Melanie Coyle. Elizabeth Danks. Good afternoon. I would like to urge the board to adopt a mask policy for the upcoming school year, at least for elementary and middle school kids during the first semester. Most of these kids and all of the elementary schoolers have not had the opportunity to get vaccinated, and I am aware of at least a few faculty who are also not vaccinated. Removing last year's mask policy would result in all the precautions we took being for nothing, if we are still not going to protect our kids going forward. We are fortunate to live in a county where so many people have been vaccinated, but it is still imperative that we protect those that haven't. Sincerely, Elizabeth Danks. Amy Castillo Gaines, Woodford County Board of Education. At this time, I would like to ask for your support and alignment with the growing platform of Woodford County Lacrosse. As a parent and voice, my goal for my children, as well as all of the Woodford County lacrosse players, is for them to feel included. Approval of this sport will allow sharing of practice rooms, fields, and facilities. Woodford County lacrosse teams have had many successful seasons and represent our county to the fullest. This sport deserves recognition as well as acceptance. With approval of lacrosse being a varsity sport in Woodford County, the sky is definitely the limit for these players. Again, my hope is for lacrosse to continue to grow and develop with the support of our athletic department and community. I appreciate your time, dedication, and consideration regarding this matter. Kindly, Amy Castillo Gaines. Todd and Kim Collings. We would like to submit written comments in support of the approval of lacrosse as a varsity sport at Woodford County High School. The ladies lacrosse team is a highly successful program and would be a valuable asset to the Woodford County sports community. Our daughter, who is an incoming junior, joined the team this past season, and we wish we had known about it sooner. As an emerging sport in this area, lacrosse has As an emerging sport in this area, lacrosse has provided an opportunity to be involved in a high school sport at the beginner level. By being an official school sport, the visibility of lacrosse would increase and more girls could become involved. We all know the benefits students gain by being involved in school sports, such as exercise, team building, and feeling connected to the school. This team is high quality on the field, having won several state league championships, coming in runner-up a few times, and always having a winning record. Off the field, it is a very welcoming team. The coaches and players are very inclusive and work hard to help new players gain the skills they need while making friends. These girls are already making Woodford County proud and deserve the recognition that would come with being an official school sport. Thank you, Todd and Kim Collins. I can't quite make out the name on this one. Scott Wilson? Okay. Mr. Wilson has 2 questions written. 1, when will parents be involved in future meetings, discussions, or any other agendas related to the Woodford County Schools in a public forum? Number 2, do Woodford County Schools still support the Black Lives Matter or BLM movement, even after statements released about BLM support for Cuban governor and suppression of their people? Scott Wilson. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. We will move on to the regular agenda for the planning meeting. And Mr. Adkins, we have the first reading of policy update number 44 and procedure update number 25.
Do we need to officially table the instructions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I should have said that.
Mr. Asher was had car issues out of town and couldn't make it in today, so he's on his way from Alabama.
All right. So is there a motion to postpone the instructional, equity, and task force updates to next week?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Now we'll move on to agenda item A and the first reading of policy update number 44 and procedure update number 25.
The policies are what have been given to us basically in legal. The only thing that we have changed at the district level is our hardship application, if I'm not mistaken. And with that, it was only maybe to streamline the application process where we moved from a checklist being attached to the front of the application to it being embedded into the application, so it's not lost. That way, everyone's on the same page, that instead of one individual bringing home an application without the checklist, it's actually embedded. So,
Okay, and Grant, my understanding is that we have to read out the changes to those policies aloud. Is that correct? Or can we just read them on the agenda attachments?
You can just read them on the agenda attachments. You don't have to have a full reading of the text of an amendment.
Okay. Then is there a motion to approve the first reading of policy update number 44 and procedure update number 25 as attached to the board agenda?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
So as I was looking through the list of the policy numbers that were adjusted and adopt as written and adopt with modification, it looks like the very last policy, 08.1132, says adopt as written, but it all looked like it was crossed out and I don't know if it was the way that I printed it or the way it came up on my screen, or if there were changes made to it.
that's what what was crossed out is what they had removed from the policy.
Okay, so it says on the form adopt as written.
With the crossed out portion is what shows you what was removed.
Okay, but wouldn't that be adopt with modification?
Probably so, yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah,
wanted
you're
to
probably
be
right.
clear because it looked like the only other changes were on the items that
Yeah,
had adopt with
I see what you're saying, yeah.
modification.
And they would all be that way then, because there's a lot of marked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Hadn't thought of it that way.
Okay.
Ms.
The reason
Cooper?
it's adopt as written is because it was.
Hold on just a second. Ms. Cooper, do you want to come up here and speak? Thank you.
It's my understanding it's adopt as written because we received an exactly like this from KSBA. So we're taking their recommendations to either make additions, subtractions, deletions, etc. from the policy procedures. So when we say adopt as written, it's adopt as we have received it from KSBA. If we say adopt as modification, it means that we have made a change to what they have recommended
What
to us.
what
Does
KSBA,
that
Okay.
make sense?
Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
we use their
That-
policy service, and what they do is that they'll take the legislation and put it into our policy, and that's how these things get marked out. We do go through it and look at it and make sure there's anything that we may want to change, but legal, we just take as is. for the
Okay,
most part.
all right, good. I wasn't clear on the wording, so thank you, Ms.
And it's a
Cooper.
good point, though, actually.
And I just had a couple of things. We didn't have discussion. Normally we have discussion.
I'm
before-
sorry, I jumped out ahead of that. I apologize.
That's okay. Policy can be a little boring. I did have just a couple of quick things. On policy 01.6, the board records, will the procedure still be that people will email Angel?
For,
As the open meetings, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
What, I'm sorry.
what is that, what is that policy?
Open records request, I'm sorry, open records.
Open records request, it comes to Angel, but a lot of times it'll come to, if it's, we would prefer it to come to one source, but sometimes if it's finance, it'll come to Mr. Martello, which he would then forward on for Angel to gather the information and help her gather the information, yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear. We haven't changed our procedure, our AP. This is
No,
just a policy change.
I think the biggest
So-
change is we have to recognize email requests, if I'm not mistaken. As far, it doesn't have to be a handwritten request now.
It actually designates you, not Angel,
Okay.
on the policy.
Gotcha.
It's the secretary
As
for the
the
board.
secretary, the
Or to the board.
record,
And I think that falls in line with you being the custodian of record
Custodian of record.
for Woodford County Schools. Is that correct, Grant?
It is.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, it designates the secretary to the board as
Okay.
being the recipient.
Yeah. And as his admin, I think people typically will send there. So I guess
Yeah.
we just want to make sure our policy, our AP is in line with our
Gotcha.
procedures in line with the policy. And then the other thing that I just kind of wanted to clarify was the retirement, and that is 03.175. I just wanted to make sure that we kind of clarified and that you were able to speak that the change here is not something Woodford County alone is doing.
Oh, no, this is-
change is, could you please just kind
Yeah,
of-
this is at the state level. This is what the new retirement legislation has required. And I think everyone's good until January 1. If you're hired after January 1, you fall under the new retirement requirements.
So since we're discussing this specifically, I think it'd be good for the public to hear what we're discussing. It's for personnel who become members of the teacher's retirement system on or after January 1st of 2022. Payment for unused sick leave days shall not be incorporated into the annual compensation used to calculate the retirement allowance in the foundational benefit, but may be deposited into the member's supplemental benefit component.
I just wanted to clarify because I think sometimes districts will do things just a little bit differently, district to district, and I didn't want our staff to think that this was just something that Woodford County and Woodford County Board was doing. The reason is that it's statewide and it's legislative.
Definitely. And we've seen some other things that were changed statewide, much like fingerprinting. We used to do it at the district level. Now it's required by the state to be done at certain locations throughout the state. So, yeah, it's things that we have to adhere to.
Thank you.
All right, are there any further questions? Then now we'll vote. All those in favor of approving the first reading of policy update number 44 and procedural update number 25, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Dr. Jones, do you want to present the district funding assurances?
They've just been uploaded, they just need board approval, so they're the same ones you do every year, they just assure that we will abide by federal guidelines for all Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, Title programs.
Okay, and for the public, Dr. Jones has said that these are all the same assurances that we approve each year for all of the title funds that flow directly to our schools for different types of categories.
And basically, that just assures the department that we will adhere to their regulations as to how the money's spent. And it's just funding. We actually, they can't release the money until we send that to them. So.
Until we send the fund assurances, okay. Is there a motion to approve district funding assurances?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. Is there discussion? Hearing none, now we'll vote. All those in favor of approving district funding assurances, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Mr. Atkins, I assume you're gonna talk to us about the Employee Assistance Program contract.
Yeah, as we've, and you know, of course, being new, I think you have had some conversation about this, but we were waiting on some approval of the contract through the attorney. So we have received that approval, and basically what this is, it set aside a pot of monies, and it's not a large pot of money, but it's to help with social emotional issues that maybe our staff would have, any staff. There's other services offered as well, but it gives our staff a little bit of support, or actually quite a bit of support, if they run into issues where you know, they may need some support, I guess you would say. I don't know, that's a lot of support, but but anyway, it does provide social emotional learnings or social emotional support for our staff as may be needed.
Okay, and I think Mr. Asher had told us when we've talked about this prior to tonight that it also includes the family of our employees for a certain number of visits for therapy, and it's a nice benefit that we are able to offer to our staff who have worked through a very hard time.
And it's really, there are a lot more assistance, or a lot more programs offered through the contract, if you have a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
It's really beneficial to the district and to the staff.
Very good. Is there a motion to approve the Employee Assistance Program and contract through Innova?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Is there any further discussion?
I did want to clarify, when we initially talked about this program, we talked about using some ESSER funds for it.
Yeah, that's
and
what
I
we-
just, would like to just say, I think that's just an appropriate and exact use of ESSER funds. I think that's a great thing.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yep.
I agree completely with that. Any further comment? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. And the next item on the agenda is to approve the adult education contract.
From what I can gather, there nothing has changed, and that's the contract with Jessamine County, as we partner with them on this. And it's actually, the program takes place here in Woodford. Am I correct on that? So nothing has changed with the contract. Just we have to approve every year.
All right, is there a motion to approve the adult education contract?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. And for discussion, I would say that we really have developed a really positive partnership with Jessamine County on this. And kudos to our staff that have worked with them. And we've seen the rates of adult education graduates go up quite a lot in the short time that I have been on the board. So that is definitely a win for our community.
And you know, we always want to look at opportunities to change lives, and that's what this program does. Changes lives.
For sure. And in the past, we've had some of our staff talk about the fact that there's kind of an expectation that kids will go to school and will finish, but when adults enter this program, it's making a choice to further themselves and to make a better life, and that's a really positive thing and something that we should all be very proud of our community for doing.
Absolutely.
All right, any further discussion?
I do just have a quick question or a request for follow-up. Do you mind going back and pulling the last 5 or 6 years of data? Because how we had done it in the past was we had our own standalone program, and I think Grant can probably weigh in, but I believe that it was kind of restructured. We didn't really just say, oh, we want to get rid of our Woodford program and go with Jessamine. It really was kind of a restructuring with the GED program, and so that was our center that we were to partner with, and I do think they've done a fabulous job, but I would like to also just see the data of in-house program versus, and again, they come here and do the program. They do a wonderful job. I've been to their graduation. It's marvelous and wonderful for not just the people that get the GED, but their families.
Yeah.
So I absolutely am 100% supportive, but I would just like to see the data.
We can get that.
Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Item E is having lacrosse as a sanctioned sport discussion and possible action. And Ms. Richardson had requested that this be added to our agenda, and I think we're all thankful that you have done that. And as illustrated by all the public comment, you know, and they were very gracious. The club group that has joined together, and they said, you know, we could probably have 100 public comments submitted with parents and students who want to say how wonderful lacrosse has been for their student athletes. But they wanted to be mindful of not being repetitive and good use of time. So we're appreciative of that. And Joey Cheek has come tonight as a representative for that group. If anyone has any questions or comments that they would like to address to him, he's willing to share his knowledge.
I think the only thing that that I'd like to say is that I requested that we take action on this tonight because I know that KHSAA has a kind of a deadline that they want to see how many counties they can get to sanction lacrosse as a sport before they completely move forward with it. If they don't move forward with it at that time and we still take action, we're still ready to go when they do. So I think it's important that we do it tonight because next week's meeting falls after the decision will be made, which I think, is that Friday, Joey?
I believe so.
Yeah. So
There is a Board of Controls meeting, I think this week at the end of the week.
yeah.
I think so.
So I wanted to see if we could just go ahead tonight. I feel like that there's not any problem with it, but if we could go ahead tonight and make have a vote to do that, I think it would help ease these parents' minds and really be an asset to the kids and the students who they've really kind of taken a hit, you know, over the years trying to keep their club together, and they've done well. So I think we owe it to them as a board to put them first and see if we can get them going tonight.
And I think they're kind of falling into a bit of a no man's land. They're unique in that they're not acknowledged as a club on our website, and they're not acknowledged as a sport on our website, as
Right.
one of our parents pointed out to me. And they certainly are high accomplishing. Our lacrosse girls have won state championships, and I think that other districts, I spoke to a board member in Scott County, they have voted to approve it as a school sport regardless of where KHSAA comes down on this. They felt like their commitment was there to provide those coaches and facilities to their student athletes. And I think that's something we have to discuss as a board tonight. I would certainly agree and advocate for making it a sanctioned sport here in Woodford County, regardless of KHSAA's actions.
Right, and I think too that it gives them an opportunity to have their designated field time on our practice fields, and you know, it makes it a little less of a situation between the students with football teams, baseball, soccer, everything, as well as coaches. So I think it's time for them to be able to have that spot. So.
It also opens a door to them getting a varsity letter
Absolutely,
and acknowledgement
yes.
going into college and scholarship opportunities that they may not have had so
Right.
far. Ms. McHale, were you going to say something?
The only question I ask is just related to what commitment that does obligate us to, and if there are any budgetary considerations we would need to make. If it doesn't pass, then are we going to need to find money somewhere? I'm certainly not advocating that we wouldn't pass that, but just sort of full understanding of what we would be obligating ourselves to.
Sure.
Yeah, and I couldn't give you an exact dollar amount on that, but there will be startup costs, simply because we'd have to have uniforms, we'd have to have the equipment,
Sure.
that type of thing. But that's with any program.
Oh,
So, yeah,
absolutely.
any opportunity that we
There would
provide.
also be ongoing costs for whatever we would pay the coaches,
Yeah, that would
drug
certainly.
testing, things like that.
I think their
So
drug testing would be the same as any of our other
Yeah, it would
student
fall
athletes.
underneath what we do already with our.
Right, but it would be an increase to it, right?
I think they're
I think we
randomly.
still just do a percentage
Yeah.
across the
All right.
district, yeah.
That's fine.
The only question I have, and I'm absolutely 100% in favor of really almost any and all activities, sports, clubs that engage our students and provide that just overall experience that any kid living in Woodford County should have. So I'm absolutely 100% for that. The only question I have is, would we also be doing this for middle school? How kind of would that look? Are there some?
I honestly haven't gotten that far, but in order to build a program, I think
would
you
have
certainly
to.
have to start at the middle school level. I don't know a lot about lacrosse, but I do know that with any other sport, you usually start at least in the middle school, if not earlier than that. So again, those are some discussions we'd have to have. Now, we have to remember as well that the site-based council at the school will have to approve this. So the way it's written is we've written it that pending KHSS sanctioning and site-based approval, we'll move forward. So the board will do their part. Okay.
I think probably just in hearing the discussion from other board members in other counties, what they're doing, I'm actually okay with removing the KHSAA
Me too.
and just having site-based only. Because again, if they sanction it, that's wonderful, and we
Yeah.
get a lot of support and help. But if they don't sanction it, I still believe and feel that it would be, beneficial for our students. And I do think we should go ahead and include middle school and high school. I just think that you have to kind of do that if you want to build a program. And middle school is a time when the kids really, really need things to be engaged in. They really need opportunities to kind of, take some of those hours and make them productive.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm all in favor of that.
Sounds good. Now, I will say that our application, Ms. Cooper and I spoke with, Ms. Cooper spoke with Mr. Johnson on Thursday or Friday. The application is in the process of being submitted. So Woodford County, it should be there today.
He was discussing it with them on
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday.
All right, Grant, how would you recommend wording on the motion so that we're making sure that it's appropriate for the action that the board has described wanting to take?
So you're wanting, from the discussion, I couldn't hear everybody, but you're wanting to make it so that it's sanctioned even if KHSAA does not make it an official KHSAA sport?
Yeah, I think we would like to afford it the same opportunities that we do with other varsity sports in Woodford County schools.
I don't think there's anything better to word it than what you just said, for you all to approve it as a varsity sport, regardless of KHSAA sanctioning.
Okay. Then is there a motion to approve lacrosse as a varsity sport and include a middle school program as well in Woodford County schools?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Richardson. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Glass. Is there any further discussion?
Just a note to all the parents in Woodford County. I've seen this program and watched this program from sort of its inception a few years ago, and we have some really, really dedicated parents that have started already, Mr. Ekins, you might not know, but already at the elementary school level, and I think that it's a really wonderful thing to see how much the sport has grown. It's a huge sport where I grew up, so it's not a new sport to me, and it's been really, really fun just for my family alone to watch how it's grown here in Woodford County, so I'm really pleased about this.
And I will say, as you look into the major elements, as I glanced over it, it does include a coach at the middle school.
Great.
I think that's perfect.
Boys and girls head coach.
Ms. Cooper, do you have a question?
Should the recommendation, the motion, include approving the staffing recommendations? Or do you want to do that at a later time?
Grant, Ms. Cooper's asking if the specific motion language needs to include an allocation for staffing on those positions, or is that assumed that it will reflect the other varsity sports?
I have not had reason to look at your extra service pay schedule, so I don't know if varsity sports, if different coaches have different dollar figures or not. If they do, then you all would need to schedule this coach specifically.
I think we would certainly have to create a salary schedule for that, simply because we're creating a position tonight, and we weren't prepared to do that.
Well, why don't we do approval of the program and then ask Mr. Adkins to bring us back approval of the salary schedules that will be needed to add next week. That way we're checking the boxes for KHSAA this week and getting ahead of that and being responsible in the fiduciary responsibilities as well. Does that sound okay to everyone? All right, then all those in favor of approving lacrosse, boys and girls lacrosse as a varsity sport at the middle and high school level, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0, and happily, one of the parents will be able to have two sons that now both are participating in recognized sports. So the one brother won't have an advantage over the other in saying that his isn't a real sport. So, all right, thank you all.
Hockey is next, by the way.
Hockey. Field hockey or ice hockey?
Let's add field hockey too.
It's fun.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Cheek.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is the format of future board meetings, whether we're going to continue as video teleconferences or regular meetings, the location of where we'll be having the meetings, the streaming of the meetings, and public comment. This is something that we have needed to discuss as a board and try and figure out our late stage pandemic protocols. I won't say post-pandemic, but we need to decide where we want to have our meetings, and the streaming the streaming component is something that we need to discuss, because if we are to go back to meeting in the schools, that puts a big burden on the staff to be taking all of our cameras to the different schools and setting up each week. So we need to figure out how best to be responsible in the time management of our district staff, but still get back to the schools so that we can see the kids' performances and see the teachers and be out in our schools. So, Mr. Atkins, you want to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my recommendation is, I like the idea of going back to public meetings, but still stream. Mr. Gibson and I had the conversation this morning about streaming, and we are looking at some new equipment that could possibly help us do that, but we are also having to look at how we're going to stream as far as what we're going to stream. Do we want to just stream this? Do we want to stream everything on the screen? Do we want to stream charts? Typically, I've seen it both ways, but I think what we need to do is to look at getting back to the public open meetings if we can at all, which will give us that opportunity, as you say, to see our students, see our parents interacting, and then give them the chance to see their students as well. There's an issue that at the central office we have a little better camera and layout, and we would go to the schools starting in September. Am I correct, Ms. Cooper? So maybe if we go ahead and start with our August meeting at the central office, we can have that equipment in place to do what we need to do at our September meetings at the school.
We need to define streaming. Because
Okay.
there's two levels of streaming that we're doing right now.
Are you able to be
doing-
heard on there, Bob, right now?
Yeah, because my mic to them is
Okay.
right here. We are streaming to YouTube for the general public, but we also have multiple people on this Google stream. What needs to drop off if we're gonna go to a public format is the Google part. Because I can more easily handle the YouTube piece and show the meeting and show the activities the kids are doing or whatever. It's still not gonna be great because we have to use a wireless connection that's nowhere near as good as wired, and right now I'm wired in to do it. Because you're talking about a lot of video and audio going through a stream. But I can't do both remotely because we've got no way to show the world the Google stream, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's what, regardless of whatever you all decide, you've got to understand which level you're talking about as far as.
So does that mean basically anybody that would be participating in a meeting would have to be physically at the meeting?
Or if it's somebody like Mr. Chenoweth there, if you all wanted to put him on a telephone right there in front of you and ask him questions from time to time on the phone, perfectly fine, because we can pick that audio up, same as we pick your all's audio up. But we can't do this level of video all at the same time remotely. We can do it here, we can do it at the board office.
Now, the cameras that we were talking about, the system we talked about today, you could basically set it up and it kind of tracks whoever's speaking. Am I correct?
If it's in the view of that camera,
Right.
that one particular, but if we've got lots of things going on with multiple cameras, you still got to choose.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
if we were to have that set up, it may be able to track everything, at least enough for it to be an idea that Grant is there or Ms. Prather is there, that type of thing.
Not
You don't think so?
with the Google. That's what I'm saying, is Google needs to go away if we want to go remote. Now, you're fine, we could do all the regular planning meetings and do both, at the two locations we're talking about. But when you start going to Southside, you're in the middle of a gym, and my wireless access point is 150 feet away from me, and then I'm trying to push that much video and audio.
So was it better, I know when we used to just record and upload meetings, that was an option, but didn't that take you a ton of time to
That
We
was,
had that
upload those?
conversation today too.
that was problematic on the upload end because a large file takes forever for YouTube to take. It's not that it's impossible, but what is impossible that way is doing multiple cameras like what Mr. Atkins is talking about.
I see.
Because we can't do that, you have to do that live.
How did we do it? How did the board do it before? Was the addition of Google, was that addition of a pandemic? Like, that's when that was added? So previously at planning and regular meetings, we never had this option anyway.
Correct.
We just would stream via the YouTube, correct?
Yes.
No,
And
we didn't.
only did that.
We were
Or you
uploading.
recorded?
And that was only recorded, right?
Okay.
So this way we could still stream live.
Yes.
We just
you-
wouldn't have everyone over here.
Anybody here would have to be on like a phone or something.
So is it better then to remove that wireless components at the individual schools and have you upload it? Does that make it a more manageable?
It's a one camera shot. I mean, but it's doable, yes.
What's preferable?
I prefer to stream it because
Okay.
streaming it puts it up there automatically and lets people tune in live. They can make comments live if they want to. You know, it's just a lot. It's there the next day because I know I've gotten emails from board members in the past. Why isn't it uploaded? Or
Still
the reason
working.
it's not there is it's still uploading for hours.
Sure.
So it, you know, streaming as soon as I hit stop, it's online.
So, Mr. Gibson, let me ask you this. Would it be possible to purchase a couple of the hot spots?
We've got enough hotspots. It's just
But if we were to put one closer to the device?
yeah, closer to the device.
Yeah.
That's what I'd have to do. Is I'd have to take
Gotcha.
one with me, plug it in with a wire, put it in the middle of the gym.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
I have a question too. If we do go back into masking pandemic mess that we've been in before, how hard is it to go back to doing these meetings?
Well, I think,
It would be. We'd just have to have
Just
certain
have to change
locations.
the location?
Yeah.
Okay.
and the type of meeting.
Right.
If we're not meeting
It
where
just
we
had to be
announce
announced on the agenda that it
Yep.
is, okay.
a special meeting, because
Right.
it's not where and when we said it would be when we announced the
Okay.
original schedule. But, I mean, is that correct, Mr. Gibson, that, it's not really any,
No, as long as we're here.
we're not
that's-
changing
reinventing
the
anything that we haven't done?
Here
Okay.
or the central office
Yeah, we
either,
can do
yeah.
it.
All right, so then will we be planning to move back to central office for next week's regular meeting? Is that your preference, Mr. Atkins?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
That would be great.
And Grant, is this something that actually requires board action to switch it? I don't know that we switched it as much as we just made changes to deal with the pandemic.
Have we already
Yeah.
identified where the meeting will be next week?
I would have to resend out the
It
agenda.
Have we identified it as being here next week? So it would make it a special call, I think.
It's already a special,
Okay,
well,
so then,
unless we're not allowing the teleconference portion, next week's is, it says via video teleconference, so it's already a special.
I already put it in high school. So I will just change the location and resend out that. agenda.
just resend it with the location change.
Grant, I'm sure you can't hear this. What they're discussing is, Ms. Cooper noted that the location for next week would be at the high school. Is it okay for her to change the physical location to the board office? Because it's already a special, because it's noted that it's via video teleconference.
Right, whatever changes you make as to format, location, and start time, just has to be done
24 hours
Yeah.
prior.
24 hours in advance, so, and that really is down to you as chair to make that final determination of noticing special meeting.
Okay, Ms. Cooper?
With next week, do I strike video teleconference or will we keep that language? Next week?
Her question is, should she strike the video teleconference for next week?
If you are truly making it so public, I feel like Ms. Prather ought to weigh in. I don't know if there are limits still in place at all, or even recommendations as to how many people can be present if we're inviting the public to attend a public meeting rather than solely view it online.
We'd like to
So-
get your opinion on that, Ms. Prather, and we should thank you for being here tonight. I could have done that at the beginning of the meeting. For any of you that don't know, Cassie Prather is the director of the Woodford County Health Department and has joined us tonight to discuss a later agenda item, but happily is here to help us with this one.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I wish I was here for other reasons. I was hoping and praying that we would be past this. It would be my recommendation that if you go back to in-person completely, you would be able to space the way that you're spaced right now. And if you cannot space adequately, then folks should be masking.
Okay, and how about the public attendance? Are there any remaining caps on the percentages of capacity that can be in a room?
No, I would just make sure that they can space at least 3 feet apart. That would be the minimum.
Okay.
And if you could cycle people in and out if they wanted to address, the public comment section, I think that would be appropriate.
Hearing this makes me wonder if moving to the board office is the best option.
We may be better here.
We may be better with the larger
It gives us a little more
room,
room at this time.
allowing for physical distancing and having the setup that Bob could assemble and disassemble in his sleep at this point. The boardroom's a tight room, and if we have an agenda item that a lot of people want to weigh in on, we're going to run into an issue. I would hate to tell someone they can't come in because the room is full and create.
We can't.
Yeah.
We just can't do that, so.
Or even to say, I like the idea that Ms. Prather suggested of cycling people in and out, but if they have multiple agenda items that they are interested in, then they aren't going to want to leave, understandably.
I'd be
Probably
concerned
better to
also
stay
at your
here.
board office of just the hallways and entrance and common areas are just incredibly compact. There's going opposite directions up and down the hallway, you couldn't even get 4 feet away from each other.
No, absolutely not.
And we'd had that conversation today in our cabinet meeting as well, about how, how crowded, how could you hold a really big public meeting there at the central office?
For sure, and we want the public to be able to attend and to do that comfortably and safely. So I would say my inclination is to let
Yes, the more we look at it, we need to stay here, I would think.
Okay, Mr. Atkins is saying that he thinks we should just keep the location at the high school, and I think that would be my preference as well. Does anyone have any thoughts other than that?
Nope.
All right, and Grant, we do not need an agenda item. It's just making the change from via video teleconference for next week, and we'll move forward as best we can going to the schools.
Ms. Cooper will send it out 24 hours. Let's just resend it again tomorrow and it's taken care
I'll
of
take
at that
out
point.
video teleconference on both
Yeah.
areas and resend it tomorrow morning.
Okay. All right. Is there any further discussion on that agenda item? All right, we will move on to the board agenda for next week. Mr. Martello, would you do the treasurer's report for us?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to try something a little bit different tonight. And I did a little bit of that on the June meeting, but we're going to do our normal, go over our 3 main reports, but also brag about what we're doing in terms of support services. And try to do that each month. Try to get through it quickly because I know we don't want to be here for 3 to 4 hours a night on Monday evenings, but just to brag about the positive things that we're doing. So with that said, I'm going to try to do a PowerPoint every time, each month during the planning session with the treasurer's report. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, just going over the 3 main reports, the monthly expenditure revenue report, the balance sheet, and the cash balance by fund. Okay. You know, it's a 50, 60-page document on the monthly and the expenditure and the revenue report that I present every month. But I just wanted to highlight one big item, because I know that was a topic of discussion last month, about the $350,000 transfer. So through June, the numbers that are shown here do reflect the $350,000 transfer. And you'll notice that that month-to-date expenditure line item that says $350, there's also a expenditure year-to-date of $445. And I thought I'd just point that out, that includes Mr. Gibson's Kets match of $95,000 commitment. So out of the general fund, we are recognizing that commitment of the $350,000 for the building fund, as well as the $95,000. And the $95,000 is actually going to Fund 2. So that's why it shows as a transfer. So that's just a big highlight I thought I would point out. And I'm not going to go over the balance sheet tonight unless there's any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to the one that I normally speak to every month with our cash balances by fund. But besides just throwing numbers at you and going down the line, I actually put in arrows and wanted to talk specifically about some of these items. On the general fund, it's fairly consistent. You know, as we have, I can talk every month, as the year goes on, without the tax revenue in October and November, the general fund gets smaller and smaller for our cash. But if you look at Fund 2, you'll see quite a larger expenditure in Fund 2 versus months on average, and that's because, and we'll talk here in a second, we were trying to be proactive and utilize some ESSER $2 that have a greater flexibility to take advantage of some things that we're already doing to address the pandemic. And so you'll see I had to recode some ESSER 2 expenditures, or some ESSER $2 to that work over to the general fund. So that's why you see such a large expenditure for the month of June during that activity. So Mr. Atkins came in on July 1, and we got to go there, got started, and put a lot of work into it, and looked at things that were eligible to really maximize those dollars. Okay. So we can go ahead and skip district and school capital outlay, but let's go down to the building fund. And I do not have an arrow here, but it's very important I point this out. Okay. We have a July 1 debt payment. We've got debt payments throughout the year, and it's a pretty significant one, over nearly $1.9 million. In years past, Ms. Smith, and there's not a right or wrong in this situation, Ms. Smith was very pro the way that she did this in the district. So on the debt schedule, the deadline says July 1 it was when the debt payment is due. Well, I looked ahead this year, and I didn't want to risk turning over a new fiscal year on July 1 with the superintendent going out the door and the new superintendent coming in and getting that wire make sure that wire happens that day, and risk having a late bond payment. Plus, the invoice actually says a due date of 6/30. So I didn't want to go down to the risk that. So there'll be more expenditures that occur in FY21. But basically, it's a double payment of the debt payment, but it'll only occur in FY21. It's just a timing thing. Years down the road, where we paid earlier this year, you'll see the domino way down the road where you'll have more recognized in the building fund. So it's just a timing thing. Plus, there are other bonds where you can't wait till the day it's due. You have to pay per the language that's bond. You have to pay it well in advance. So I just wanted to get us in that actual process, and that way we're not just paying bond payments on the day that they're due for safety. Because I come from a state where if you miss a bond payment and you were late, the state had to come in, and still Kentucky does as well. They have to step in and here to make sure that the debtors get paid, or the bondholders. So, and you automatically got put in fiscal distress. I know that's in a different state, but that's what I'm accustomed to. So, just as a recognition, it'll be a spike in FY '21, but then next year, we'll do the same thing. We'll pay that July 1 payment, and it won't be doubled up. So just as a caution. And I've already talked to the auditor, and they're aware of it, because I actually asked if I need to do what they call a prepaid, and she said, at that point, no, that's just something we'll bring out in the audit, just make sure everybody's on the same page on what happened.
So basically, last year it was paid on 7/1. This year we paid at 6/30.
Yes, sir.
Which will look like it was a double payment in
Yes, sir.
fiscal year.
Yes, sir.
Fiscal year
I
21.
just, with Mr. Atkins coming in that day and getting, you have to, all the checks have to have Mr. Atkins' signature and my signature on the day one. I just didn't want to risk having that opportunity to fall through the cracks with the bank. And so I was trying to be proactive, but you need to know. So,
Thank you.
yes. Okay. Construction fund. I put here Southside Kitchen Project. Mr. Atkins and I have some work to do in terms of addressing these projects that are outstanding that were with a BG1 that we have finished. And there's perhaps still a balance in the construction fund that we need to close those out and have those.
That's a positive.
That's a positive.
I was going to say, I remember very clearly the completing the BG1.
Yes.
And I would have said so is that the contingency that remained?
Don't get me wrong. I know that those were dollars that weren't fully utilized, which is a good thing.
Sure.
Project that went under budget. But those are items that I need to seek direction from the department. Okay, we've got these additional dollars. We've closed out these projects. What's the appropriate way for documentation where we can utilize those funds?
And if I'm not mistaken, they can only be used for another project.
Yes, sir.
Those funds can only be used for another project.
Yes,
They
sir.
can't be used for just
Yes, sir.
oddball things. It has to be another construction project.
Yes, sir. So, skipping down debt service, you'll see that it nets out. The money came in from the building fund for that June payment. And so it's clearing out to zero. Food service, again, Mr. Courtney did a great job this year. Ms. Squire did a great job. But what we haven't done in years past is we have not been taking advantage of that indirect cost opportunity. And we have the opportunity to take advantage of it unrestricted. Now, we don't want, in my opinion, we don't want to, decimate her program. But then again, we've had some revenue in FY '21 because of the pandemic and federal government bringing those additional dollars that have increased that balance. So we're just recoding it or doing an indirect cost charge to pay the support services to process payroll, HR, technology to assist the food service department. And so we're just utilizing that and doing indirect costs to the child nutrition fund.
I do feel that we'll see an increase in the food service funds again as we get back into school. We'll certainly feed more kids when more students, and that's how we're reimbursed once we get more students back into the physical buildings.
And on that note, I do think it's important to mention that the free lunches for the district has been approved again for the upcoming school year. I know that's a question that we get as board members a lot, and that's great news that our families won't have to be concerned about that again, and that is how we've seen that fund grow so much.
I do have a quick question about the indirect costs. So what you're doing is you're taking the food service fund that previously went to the food service director and out to the schools to provide food services for students, and we're capturing some administrative type costs. So we're taking that and bringing it back to central office and using that to balance the sheet. Is that something that you would anticipate doing every year now that it's happened once, or is that something that then it would just go back to the actual food service program
I would.
again next year?
I would recommend that every year. Both districts I've been in have done it every year, and you're not affecting the program at all. You'll see programs get to a point that the department will tell them they need to spend money. So if we have that opportunity, and we've got $737,000 as a balance.
And I definitely think some of the pandemic and the benefits that the government gave us with the lunches being free for, and breakfast being free for our students has helped kind of puff that up a little bit. Historically, we had a program where, sometimes we didn't break even there. And so we raise the rates for students to pay
Yeah,
breakfast and lunch.
and we will not do that. If we get into a situation where we're depleting the fund, we'll certainly not do that.
Okay, is that
As long as
something
the
you
fund
can
is healthy, then we will continue to offer our services as far as our custodial services, our management services, those types of things. That's where you get the indirect costs, is you have your custodians go and clean the cafeteria instead of cafeteria workers. And you're paid for that. You can turn around and be paid for that. So as long as the fund is healthy, we will continue to do that, but if we'll never affect the program in itself.
Is that something you can just kind of track and watch?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
like Ms. Bradley said, next year it won't be an issue because the federal government has extended this program. And so I just don't want it to get down a few years down the road and us to be thinking that all the money coming in is going straight to the food program.
And it is controlled as well. Yeah, they won't allow you to do.
Well, you just have to make it up from general fund.
Well, they won't allow you. The food service folks won't allow you to decimate the fund.
How long ago, Sherry, was it that was a negative balance? It certainly has always been above like 400,000 since I've been here.
It actually, we had to raise rates just a few years back. Sometimes we have to raise rates because it's a requirement to participate.
I remember doing that.
And other times we've had to raise rates because, it just wasn't balancing out. So we did some proactive things staffing wise and hired Ms. Quire and have done a few things. But again, I just think it's one of those programs where if you've never gone in and taken indirect costs before to kind of go back and bolster your general fund bottom line, that if you're going to start doing that, you just need to keep an eye on that. And again, you can do that with other programs too. So you can go in and capture indirect costs in other ways with other programs, I think. So you just want to just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. It's just something we've not done in Woodford County before. We've always allowed all of those funds to go to the actual food service program.
So I think we look at this every month, right? It hasn't been a month that we haven't looked at it, so I think that we'll have information.
Well, and I think that
real time.
it's proof that the 730 is the fund is healthy.
Yeah.
And being that I have oversight over support services, Ms. Clark and I have had a discussion before we even booked this, or I booked this. I did mention an investment in the program is going to happen before we even entertain indirect costs at the end of the year. So if you need capital outlay expenditures in terms of ovens, food serving tables, those types of things, please, and it's needed to be replaced. We're gonna expense those before we even talk about indirect costs. So the program will not suffer.
Okay, so we would, like if she needed ovens or something, you would.
If they're items that need to be replaced, absolutely.
Yeah, we have no other option but to replace it. We have to. I mean, we have to feed kids.
Right.
Nothing will get in the way of that.
We've restricted our capital outlay, so I just want to make sure she would have the funds. So you would release some of these indirect funds back to her?
We just paid out general fund,
Okay.
which is where the indirect funds come from or go to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm using the wrong term. I'm used to
Yeah.
fixed assets. When I say
Oh,
capital,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking when I say capital outlay,
Capital
old stomping
expenditures.
grounds, things that are $1,000 or more,
Yeah.
where they get tagged in terms of fixed asset. Dating myself in another state. Okay. So daycare, very much a positive thing, where that balance was going down a little bit, where we had the opportunity graciously through some grant dollars, where that went up a little bit in the month of June, where I did the redistribution to utilize some of those federal dollars. Okay, just giving a caution, something we've got to keep an eye on. Just looking at the numbers, we'll be okay in FY22. I feel we'll probably be okay in FY23. We'll have to look at it. But when we get to FY24, kind of like where we saw the downward trend until we had those opportunities for those federal dollars, that's something that we've got to look at.
Well, and that's something I'd like to touch on real quick. These are federal dollars. They are one-time dollars. But if you follow the matrix and you use these dollars for what the matrix says they can be used for, then that puts money directly back into your general fund, which then doesn't make them one-time dollars. Now you use them any way you want to. You buy ovens, you buy buses. So it doesn't go away at that point. If we can funnel it back into the general fund and we follow the matrix, To me, that's the way you use your federal dollars. It will go away. You figure out a way to put them back into the general fund, and that's kind of what we're doing.
And then the CARES, it's nearing completion on the first round of ESSER or ESSER 1 or /CARES, like we've talked about in previous months. So any questions on the cash balances by fund report?
Could you have found a smaller font?
I'll do better. Next month, we'll split it into two slides.
Portrait.
Yeah.
But I was thinking our PowerPoint was going to be larger, but we've got to accommodate for the virtual. Sorry.
No worries, I'm just teasing.
Okay. Real quickly, I'm going to go through the different departments on the highlights. Summer feeding. So through the month of June, you can see the different weeks. That first week of June, Ms. Choir and her team served 110 meals in terms of those different dates. And you can read for yourself, lunch was 103. And then that second week, those counts are there. And I think they're still finalizing for the final June counts.
No, these are through our summer school programs, am I correct?
Sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is that why the number jumped the second week? The first week was not summer, the 6-1 through 6-10, there was 110 and 103, and then the next week there was 135 and 138. We know why there was a spike in that.
Do not. But I
Just more of
I mean, it's okay. You don't
probably
have
just
to,
more of a participation.
Right.
Once the word got out on the street that summer school was a little
Yeah.
bit of fun, or a lot of fun,
Right.
folks started wanting to come.
And
Yeah.
parents had them home for a whole week, and we're like,
Yeah.
okay, never mind. We don't want summer break.
Right.
And this is an opportunity for us to thank Courtney Choir and all of our
Absolutely.
food service staff who have really done yeoman's work since the very beginning of the pandemic and continued throughout. We're very fortunate to have them in Woodford County and to have our kids that are at risk have these opportunities for food throughout the summer, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of them.
Do these numbers also include like the weekly meal pickup bags and any of the other home deliveries, or are these just meals served
think
during
they're-
summer school?
Looks like that's the next page.
Oh.
I'm going to think these are summer
Okay.
school because the numbers I got from summer school were ranged anywhere from 130 to 100 and maybe even
Oh, I am
160 kids.
skipping ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, really, if you think about it, kids, that are coming back and continuing through the summertime, and parents who are actually involving their kids in that's
Yes.
a lot of kids.
It is.
And next month, I'll probably have a little bit more detail on some of the things you're talking about, just so you don't throw out too much in one night. So, summer, let's see if I can do this here.
Can you go back to that calendar view? Sorry.
Calendar view.
Your last slide.
The summer,
Oh,
yeah. One before this one.
I'm not sure. Okay.
That second row includes 2 Fridays, and the first row includes 1 Friday. I think that's the difference.
Oh, okay.
The 4th, 11th, 18th, and
So it
25th
should
on
have dropped
Friday.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a week that 4th of July. I guess we started on that Monday or that Tuesday
Tuesday,
after the
yeah.
Monday, 4th
Okay.
of July. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoweth.
okay. They're doing Vacation Bible School, summer school programs, obviously, assisting Sunshine Camp at Falling Springs, and then our ETC program. Again, you can see the weekly bulk meal bags and the count of the 60 to the different homes. Ms. Choir's already got the menus up for all of the schools, with the exception, I think she said maybe the high school, there was 1 or 2 she was still finalizing, but she's already got those meal prep, meal menus for the schools out
The
online.
color-coded menus
They are.
so
Oh, I
nice.
always like
That is
those.
such
Yeah.
a nice thing for families.
Yes. So this is just 2 of probably 6, but she did a great job on those. Transportation. So our 3 buses, our new buses are here. two propane and one diesel. And Ms. Penn is excited about those. Currently, as of today, as of this evening, we've got 28 drivers with the 25 routes. And in talking to her, she's going to have the same way they ended in terms of the route structure on the last day of school.
She felt like we'll be able to follow the same routes as we were at the end of school. And we have
That'll
the
be
staff.
nice for continuity for
Yeah.
the families.
And that's as of today. You know how that always works.
We had a really good conversation with her today, and I feel like, as she says, knock on wood, but we're in pretty good shape with staff as far as bus drivers and everything, which is very scary.
The new bus, or one of the new buses, just a real quick picture. And some of the new features, there's a backup camera that she was talking about here.
Oh, I see.
You know, how many years that's been needed.
Mr. Martello, I had a question on the bus purchases. It's been a while since I've ridden a school bus, with the exception of field trips or things like that. Could we get numbers, I don't expect you to have them today, but on the cost of buying air-conditioned buses
Okay.
going forward? Even if some of the bus drivers had mentioned to me that some districts just have 2 or 3 buses with air conditioning, and they use those for their longer field trips, where the kids are going to be in there for a good long ride.
Sure.
I wondered if I don't have any idea what the cost difference is, but if we could check that and just see, so that maybe next year we could make that an initiative if it's not cost prohibitive.
Ms. Penn and I discussed that today as well.
Oh, good, okay.
What we've seen traditionally in other districts has been about a $10,000 to $15,000 increase, which to me, for the comfortability of students and even at times the safety and health of students, it's worth it. So those are, and I told her we'd definitely look at that next summer, simply, or this fall when we start our own buses, because to me it's important. That's an important aspect.
I think just to have some available in the fleet, it may be cost prohibitive to have all of them, but I think as a district, and I think that's another opportunity that we could look at grant money to see if there are funds out there for buses that are more economic, or any sort of grant money on that front.
One thing too, we really got to the end of the year, the fiscal year, in terms of receiving our buses. I'd like to order probably even earlier if we can, if that's the decision of leadership and the board, because with the pandemic and the opportunity for supplies limited, those really delayed. And so I wanted to hit, if we're going to buy buses, I wanted to hit in FY22, because we didn't get them until the month of June, and it was really cutting it close. So that's a conversation.
But I will say that's typically when the months of May and June are when you get them. It doesn't matter when you order them, I think. Even though I think it's KISTA that we don't use, though. We buy straight out of general fund. But KISTA has a drop-down deadline, I think, in November, which is why you typically get them in May and June. So we possibly, where we're buying straight from general fund, could get them earlier possibly. So it's something we need to look into.
Sure. New this year, the bright orange seat belt for drivers. Why that is, in terms of the significance of safety, I'm assuming, I don't know. So, but she did point that out. There's a backup light to assist the drivers from backing up in the dark, that she mentioned on the new ones. Maintenance and facilities. So we are doing the north side pavement, where we try to do a paving project each summer. And so the lucky winner this year was north side. We did have to replace a water line in the gym area. It was a pretty decent project. And then Simmons, as we have some lighting go out, we're trying to do the energy efficient bulbs and balances with that and doing that. And then we did get our new mower. The new high school project, I'm trying to do a status each month and just kind of tell you what we did and went through in terms of the different meeting groups or the different groups. So we had 2 meetings that day on the 13th. We met with Beard and went over the financial situation in terms of our bonding capacity and revisited those items in terms of different opportunities there. The key stakeholders meeting was also held that day, and that stakeholders group was quite a diverse group, with the educational group, maintenance in terms of the maintenance director and a few of his, or the maintenance director representing his staff, construction manager, architect, a board president, Mr. Atkins, and myself. So, and
We had some staff as well. Technology was
Yes.
there. I think our Tracy, our special needs director was
Francis.
there. Yeah, Tracy Francis. Mr. Asher was there.
And Mr. Howell.
so it was good.
Yes, and the principal, Mr. Howell.
So we just revisited some different topics and got some things out and had some good discussion. So the next meeting regarding the project is a systems meeting, and that's for the different trades. With the electrician, our electrician, our plumber, and the HVAC, and the maintenance supervisor, and myself. And so just going to look at those systems, what's proposed by the CM and the architect, and go over those. And again, that's just going to be a constant review every month, dialogue. And that leads into the monthly meetings that are now going to occur on the last day of the calendar month for the most part. And it's going to be between the CM, the architect, myself, some of the key stakeholders. Will be a consistent group. But depending on the different type of meeting, in terms of where decisions need to be made, we'll bring in some other key individuals in the district. So it just depends on the different topic of that particular month.
So would this be the same group that met?
In April?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
This would be, this is more, they're getting into the weeds on the specific packages. It was my understanding after that meeting. I want to point out a couple of things from the board perspective. I know that Kelly Mersick is going to reach out and probably has reached out to some of you to set up independent bonding, a time to talk with you guys about bonding and some of the things that she presented that day. She's going to reach out to each board member. But then, for instance, the meeting on the 3rd, like he said, that's going to be discussion of like the HVAC systems. I would say the difference between these meetings and the meetings of the value engineering committee that we set up would be more of, the value engineering is more of a broad project focus and making sure that we have the design where the community and the teachers want it to be. This is the setting up the minutia of how many hubs or drops, I think is what Mr. Gibson called them, for internet capability, and then
So
working
do
with.
we have a schedule for that team to meet again?
That is something we need to set up.
Okay.
Yes.
That would be great to have that put in the calendar as well. If this is a standing meeting on the 30th of the month, when is that team going to meet?
And
that would be helpful.
correct me if I'm wrong, but when you speak of value engineering, those were the meetings where you were trying to determine what options you would.
So we had a committee that was created. This is the one that I mentioned to you, to try and, like you said, to look at value engineering options, and then to prioritize. The scope of the committee is to prioritize the alternates that would be selected. So after each board member has had a chance to meet with Baird, and then you have a chance to talk with us and maybe give an update at subsequent meetings, then we do need to get another meeting on the books for that.
Yeah, because the meeting was very positive with Baird as far as alternates. So without saying too much, I'll say that.
Then, yeah, I think it's really important that we get that team back together,
Yes.
because that's where
Yep.
some of those concerns originated.
Yes.
Absolutely.
as well.
I think if we shoot for, if you want to share your availability, that let's don't look at the first week of school, but maybe that following week. I know the first week of school, with as many school staff as we have on the committee, that might be a bit hectic for them. So maybe if we look for dates for that committee to meet the week of August 16th to the 20th.
I am available that week.
Okay. And I will reach out to the others on the committee. Is there one? We have a board meeting on Monday, the 16th. Maybe we can look at Tuesday, the 17th as a tentative date.
Sure, Tuesday or Wednesday would work.
All right, I will send out an email on that. Thank you. And that gives time for each of the board members to have that contact with Baird and to have everyone have the same information. So that'd be good.
Great, thank you very much.
With that said, I am done with my presentation tonight.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Martello?
Thank you for all your hard work.
Yes.
I know you've worked
Thank you,
hard
Ms.
the last
Martello.
few weeks. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
It is a crazy time of the year for you.
He
Thank
has
you.
another, I think about another week and a half left. And I know specifically that because I'm still getting emails from my former finance director that is saying she's closing down as well.
All right, we will jump past the opportunity for public comment and get to the consent agenda. This is a bit of a change for Mr. Adkins. He said that in Floyd County, they did it just a little differently.
The
That
chair, this is your guys' meeting, and the chair basically did that. Doesn't bother me at all to do it. So, approved donation request. If you'll look ahead, you'll see that we had some donations, or actually, I guess, the funds placed back to the schools from Kona Ice, from Coca-Cola, those types of things. No major donations to speak of. Okay. Any questions? I'm sorry.
nope. If you just want to point out if there's anything in each item that kind of stands out to you as being noteworthy for the board, that's kind of how we've done it in the past.
Gotcha.
Is Mr. Hawkins has taken us through the consent agenda, and mostly there's lots of things that we see in there repetitively each month, and he did note, if there's a big trip, the senior class goes to New York City, and kind of pointing out those things.
Yeah.
Just obviously there's a lot of things that we see each month.
Yeah. So when we look at fundraiser requests, one of the coolest things we saw, and we discussed it in cabinet, is that I think it's the high school cheerleading team has built a cheerleader where you can buy a bow, and that money is given to the cheerleading team, and it buys a hair bow or a bow or buy a skirt.
I thought you said boat for
bow. No, bow.
I'll take one.
Well, that
Yeah.
lacrosse team's going to want that
Yeah.
too.
So, and you can go through every aspect. It's even the shoes, all the things that cheerleaders use. I don't know all that stuff, but pom-poms, I would imagine.
I would imagine.
So, but I thought it was really neat because it's a sheet with everything on it, and you can have that option to purchase to help build a cheerleader. Yeah. Okay. That was the most interesting fundraiser, I would say. Travel requests, I think in here we have the is it the 8th grade trip to Chicago?
It is, yeah.
And then the band trip to New York. Am I correct? Is it New York? Seniors, okay.
Yeah.
So those are in here as well.
Oh, that's exciting.
So exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting that they're going to get to start traveling again. It really is. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but these trips are traditional.
They are, absolutely. And
Every
they're
year.
things that our kids really look forward to and hate that COVID affected so many of those traditions for our students.
Yeah. Things that we have to do again, just approve list of authorized small purchase approvers. That's basically on staff.
Yep.
So nothing's changed there, other than I would imagine I've been added.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Approved contracts, orientation and mobility, the Life Adventure Center. I think that's something we do every year as well, from what I have gathered. So that's the same contract and the same group that we've always used, if I'm not
No
mistaken.
change on those contracts, Angel? Okay, thank you.
Approved school fees. We've gone through, looked at those, scrutinized, made some calls, and still looking at them actually, but they're there. Nothing really stood out big time, so something that we have certainly gone through and looked at. Approved number 2 reading of policy updates 44 and procedure updates 25, which is what we addressed this afternoon. And then which of course would be the second reading and would put those policies and procedures into place.
All right. And we'll move on to the regular agenda items. And that will include the notification of personnel matters and the notification of payment of bills, the approval of meeting minutes from several different meetings. And then item E, the authorization to solicit bids for the 2021-2022 school year.
Yeah, we have to have approval for that every year as well. I'm not exactly sure what's up for bid or what Mr. Martello has scheduled to bid, but I'm pretty sure it's attached. Am I correct?
This is just, yes, sir. This is just allowing us to facilitate the bid process on whatever we do during the course of the year. I know we've got a bunch.
Yeah.
So this is just a general approval for that facilitation of bids for different things.
To allow me to do the bidding process, yes.
Okay. All right. And then item F is approve amendment of position title, and that one looked pretty straightforward. I believe Mr. Asher was requesting that we reclassify a position from a
I think the
math
high school,
interventionist, reclassifying it to a math teacher, and it's a 0.5 position and no change, just strictly a change to the title.
Yeah, there was no change to funding. That was a concern, so no change there to funding.
All right, Mr. Atkins, item G.
Reinstate the assistant superintendent position. 11 years ago, the way the organizational chart read, there were 2 assistant superintendents or deputy superintendents in the district. So as we looked and had discussion, I had Ms. Cooper look to see if the positions had been abolished, and they haven't. They have not been abolished. So as of right now, I would like to request that we reinstate that position and give me an opportunity to put someone into that position. And maybe even later on, look at maybe combining another position or so to go back to that 2 deputy superintendent organizational chart.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
that? Does that give the opportunity for if, heaven forbid, there was something that happened to the superintendent, would that person then step in instead of the board having to replace with an interim, or? How
More
does
than
that-
likely, what you would do would be to take the assistant and place them as the interim.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Just to
it's-
be
it's-
legal.
Yeah, it's basically I mean, it sounds like it's an improvement to the system, or
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
an
without
opportunity
delay.
that if business could continue
Right.
if I were becoming incapacitated.
I
So-
hate to bring that up.
So if my wife would have heard the statement I made about her not wanting to get off the phone earlier, I'd probably become incapacitated. So.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, it's been an hour, so he's
Right.
past the honeymoon period.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Are there any further questions on that item? All right, the next one is the BG1 for the Woodford County High School roof section replacement.
Yeah. Actually, one of my days when I was here, I had a chance to meet with Mr. Hawkins, and we had an opportunity to meet with some roof specialists from here in the county. I think it's Trimco, and they had gone and looked at this leaking roof, and they had done core samples, and it's in pretty rough shape. And I have the pictures of the core samples, those types of things, if you need to see them. But it's something that we're certainly going to have to repair. Especially if we're going to be in the facility another 3 to 4 years, we're certainly going to have to repair it, because again, the safety and health of our students are our top priority. So we're going to take care of this facility while we have to be in it. Now, in talking to Mr. Martello and what it looks like, there's approximately a $200,000 cost associated to this. We've looked at some ways to pay for this, and we feel that general fund right now is the best way to pay for that. Because of some federal laws. So we can get more into that later, but that right now, that is probably the best way to pay for it.
Okay. Any questions on that item? All right, there's no old business noted. At this point, if we could please move back to the discussion items on the planning agenda, and then we'll come back to the communication section on the board agenda. Item A, Mr. Atkins, is the KEDC membership.
Yes, that is the largest cooperative in the state. It's located here. It actually started in Ashland, but it's located here at the conjunction of Winchester and New Circle Road, straight across from CKEC, if I'm not mistaken. Someone had told me that. I didn't know where CKEC EC is located, but they're just straight across from each other. And basically it just gives us a larger group to pull from with PD. They have some financial assistance as far as helping with finance directors. They offer, close your ears, Mr. Chenoweth, but they also offer some legal services. Do that with Mr. Tim Crawford. And it's just a really good chance for PD for our district. And as close as we are, I would hate not to take advantage of that simply because it's 10 minutes across town. Now, I'm not saying we certainly we're staying in our local co-op with CKEC, but again, we partner with both, and they partner with each other. So I just feel like it's a good opportunity for the district. And you know, as I looked across, I know in Floyd County we were a member of both. Scott County just joined, which made them a member of both. Harrison County belongs, which makes them many of the districts around us belong to both. So it just gives us more, I would say, more of an extended family to lean on through COVID, and just they have a bid list actually that if we need services we can go directly to that bid list. They've already placed bids and we could use them immediately. So there are a lot of opportunities there that just gives us again another extended family to work with.
And what's the cost of that membership?
I think that was it $5,070. Now, one of the things that Mr. Martello and I've talked about too, we should be able to pay our co-op dues right now out of ESSER funds, and here's why. Because they are providing support for us through the COVID pandemic. Actually, the team from CKEC is writing a template that we'll receive on Friday, not just for us, but they're writing it for all the districts in the CKEC region. So, and it's for ESSER monies. So it gives us that opportunity then to again, lean on a group of folks instead of just standing alone individually. And I'll quote Dr. Hub on this one from our last meeting: there's safety in numbers. So as long as there's a bunch of us, it's we need to stick together if possible.
The only other question I would have on that is, if with this being the first year that we join, is this the kind of thing that you can try to track and see
Yes.
what benefits the district realizes
The
as a
services
member,
that we use.
and kind of make a note of here's a benefit that we realized from this KEDC membership, to make sure that it is a good decision.
And they track that stuff at KEDC as well for us, so they would have numbers of what our district has done with them for the year.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? All right. And are you going to want to move that to an action item for next week?
Yes, please.
It's currently
We
a
can.
discussion meeting,
Yes.
or a discussion item. Okay. So, Ms. Cooper, if you would switch that over to an action item for next week's agenda. All right, the next discussion item is face masks and health protocols. And again, we have Cassie Prather here from the Woodford County Health Department to weigh in and give us some guidance. Cassie, do you want to start on this for us and kind of go through what KDE has shared with the local health departments and districts, and any changing or new guidance that you may have received?
So the Healthy at School guidance at KDE has been rescinded, but then they came back and added some key points to the CDC guidance and then reissued new guidance. And the key takeaways from that, of course, we know students benefit from in-person learning. There's no surprise there. Most of them do. And we want them to safely return to in-person instruction in the fall. Vaccination is currently the leading public health prevention strategy to end the pandemic. Promoting vaccination can help schools safely return to in-person learning, as well as extracurricular activities and sports. Masks should be worn indoors by all individuals age 2 and older who are not fully vaccinated. Consistent and correct mask use by people who are not fully vaccinated is especially important indoors and in crowded settings when physical distancing cannot be maintained. The CDC recommends schools maintain at least 3 feet of physical distance between students within classrooms, combined with indoor mask wearing by people who are not fully vaccinated to reduce the transmission risk. When it is not possible to maintain a physical distance of 3 feet, such as when schools cannot fully reopen while maintaining these distances, it is especially important to layer multiple other prevention strategies, such as indoor masking, Screening, testing, ventilation, hand washing, respiratory etiquette, staying home when sick and getting tested, contact tracing in combination with quarantine and isolation, and cleaning and disinfection are also important layers of prevention to keep schools safe. Students, teachers, and staff should stay at home when they have signs of any infectious illness and be referred to their healthcare provider for testing and care. Many schools serve children under the age of 12 who are not eligible for vaccination at this time. Therefore, this guidance emphasizes implementing layered protection strategies, using multiple prevention strategies together consistently to people who are not fully vaccinated, including students, teachers, staff, and other members of their households. COVID-19 prevention strategies remain critical to protect people, including students, teachers, staff, and those who are not fully vaccinated, especially in areas of moderate to high community transmission levels. And localities should monitor community transmission, vaccination coverage, screening, testing, and occurrence of outbreaks to guide decisions on the level of layered prevention strategies. So that's why, of course, I'm here tonight. We have been seeing a stark increase in cases locally. We've had almost 200 cases reported over the last 2 weeks. And I know that since last year, these numbers may have changed a bit, but according to the numbers that we have, the target population in Woodford County Public Schools, meaning those that are 12 years in age or older, account for about 2,353 students. And at this time, only 21.3% of them are vaccinated. And so in between investigating cases, our COVID team has been reaching out to those families. We've gotten several firm no's, even from some of the parents that have been vaccinated but have chosen not to vaccinate their children. We have seen an increase last week. I believe July 7th was the last day to start the first vaccine in order to be fully protected by the time school started back in session. And so we're going to continue to contact these parents of the individuals that are 12 and older. But with the current rate of infection and the incidence rate being, we're in the moderate phase right now. But once the COVID map is updated with the cases that we received over the weekend, which from Friday to Sunday was 16 cases, that will actually throw us back into the critical phase. We'll go from accelerated and orange to red critical. Several of these are connected to outbreaks. I know for any of you all following the news, there was a congregate setting where an exposure occurred among primarily those that were unvaccinated. Several of those in the congregate setting, at least 42 people in Woodford County didn't get infected. Several of them were breakthrough cases, meaning cases that were vaccinated. But so far, of the ones that have been vaccinated that have gone to, tested positive, only one of them have been hospitalized. And they were actually hospitalized for an underlying condition right before they were exposed. So, to summarize, vaccines work, especially this one, in preventing serious illness. No, it does not completely prevent you from getting COVID. We are seeing an uptick in cases. I don't know what that will look like 3 weeks to a month from now, because if we'd been having this meeting a month prior to this, before we saw the outbreak, we were down to 1 case a week. And so in other countries and states where they see the Delta variant, it's not a typical bell curve of cases line. And that's what we are seeing, starting to see here in Kentucky and in Woodford County. I do not know at this time that the cases that are circulating in our county are Delta variant. We have 8 specimens that have been submitted to the Division of Lab Services, which is the state lab. And those specimens are to be genomic sequenced by Friday. And when I have that information, I will share it. But again, concerning the outbreak several outbreaks actually that we've been investigating, we have had several of the samples genomically sequenced. But before we'll get the result, that exposure and the people that were exposed will be out of isolation. So we just don't have the capacity in the state yet to stay ahead of that. So I want to, while I have your attention, say thank you to everyone that helped us get it through last year. Our partnership was instrumental. We kept the infection rate very low in the schools because of masking and the partnership and the communication between the nurses, our COVID investigative team, lunchroom staff, teachers. Everybody chipped in, even off the clock, to help us make sure that anyone that was exposed was notified. We do have some opportunities in the future to partner with the school district on offering testing and vaccination. I anticipate that by the end of this month or early next month, Moderna will also be approved in kids 12 and older. So we'll have more than one product available in that age range. I also anticipate that by the end of this year, we will have an approved product for those 6 months and older. And so there's an opportunity. We received grant funding, extended lab capacity grant funding from the state of Kentucky Department for Public Health to offer testing. And this is all self-administered testing. It's not intranasal. You're not, going to your brain for a specimen. Just simply take a Q-tip type swab into your nose, and you submit it yourself into a tube. So we'll have the opportunity for PCR, the polymerase chain reaction testing, which is really the gold standard. It takes the least amount of media in order, or say specimen, to be able to yield a result. And then we'll also be able to offer rapid tests. We'll also be able to send off tests. So there are several opportunities to do surveillance, screening, testing, and vaccination in the schools this year. So I will try my best to answer any questions that you all may have, but at this time, approximately 80% of the student body, 12 to 18 years old, are not vaccinated.
Okay.
Can you tell us specifically how you know what kids are and are not vaccinated in our student population?
Yes, we have access to enter into and view the Kentucky Immunization Registry. We offer vaccines at the health department, just in general. That's the majority of what we do, especially over the summer when parents are off and can get their kids' vaccines updated. We've been especially busy because last year this was something that people really didn't keep current on just because of the pandemic. But we can view everyone in the county that's been vaccinated.
So you all are actively pulling vaccination records of students of Woodford County schools right now, taking a look at them, and then contacting families and asking them to vaccinate?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the school actually kindly sent out a one call for us prior to the July 7th vaccination clinic date.
Right, yeah.
We did that blindly, basically.
Yeah.
We just, it went to everybody.
Yeah. Well,
And that did, there was a little bit of concern on the part of the parents that we were saying it was a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
That was not the case, just taking this opportunity to clarify that. It was just letting people know about the availability.
So is this agenda item tonight specifically for the board to to vote next week, or are we going to take, like we did last year, the governor's recommendations and go with that, as long as we can?
So I would say,
I think there's a confusion in town that we are going to vote and say kids have to wear masks or they don't have to wear masks. I don't really want that responsibility.
I think we opened that up for discussion, and it was good to hear from Ms. Prather, and just good to see what the guidance was from KDE, and I think I emailed all that to you
Yes.
guys. But I certainly wanted you to see and be aware of what was going on, and Ms. Prather has really enlightened us on that.
Yeah.
I don't foresee a vote on that.
Right.
I really don't. Well, in the near future anyway, I'm looking to see, and I think we all should look to see what I don't even know what the governor said today at 3 o'clock, but we need
Well-
to wait and see what type of issues or mandates we receive before we go out on a limb. If you stick your neck out, sometimes you get it cut off before you can pull it back.
And Ms. Prather, I appreciate your information and going over everything with us. I don't envy your position. I know it's not easy because people are either on one side of the issue or the other side of the issue, and you have to kind of come in between and you know, and try to express what your job is. So I appreciate you coming tonight. Even though I have different feelings than you, I still appreciate you being here.
Well, I have lots of feelings, lots of emotions, and I'm certainly tender to this because we've been dealing with it for so much longer even than the public has been. We deal with infectious diseases all the time. You know, we don't just deal with COVID. But we do, you know, we deal with also with vaccines all the time. And so my job, my duty to the county is to give, you know, always be transparent, give you the information that I have so that you all can make the best decisions. And that's what I've done tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I do think, to your question, I think the bad part about this, and it's unfortunate, and it's not something that I don't know that it could be prevented, but once again, we find ourselves getting ready to start school when you would hope that everything is finalized by the beginning of July so that we can make good plans, and I don't think that's going to be the case again. I think the worst thing that we could do as a board is to have a vote that is then changed. I think it's very hard for our parents and families to keep up with the sliding scale of requirements that KDE sends, and we have to apply. And I don't think it's, I think the better part of our job may be inaction and waiting to see how this situation changes and what the governor decides and what the health department recommends. Because I think it's going to be changing right up until school starts again. And that is something that a huge thank you to Kelly and Garrett and all of our school nurses, because when it changes at the last minute like this, it is tough for them to turn on a dime and make the new guidance for our schools.
And you know, we dealt with that all last year.
Oh, yeah.
It changed almost by the hour.
Yeah.
It did. So I think it is in our best interest to just kind of to wait and see.
Ms. Glass?
I just have one question, and I don't know, Cassie, Mr. Atkins, Garrett may be able to answer it. I know that I've heard some questions, mainly from the elementary level. So, you know, they love their, what do they call them, lima bean shaped tables, like that they can do
they're
small,
kidney tables.
the kidney tables, kidney bean tables, yeah, whatever. That they can do their small groups. You know, that's very important for them. You know, I've just talked to some teachers that are like, you know, we're looking at almost starting, you know, year 2, so 2.5 years into that we have not been able to do that type of instruction. So as the guidance is written now, if children were masked, is that enough spacing? Like, is that something that they could bring back, that type of instruction, instead of, you know, that just seems like that's more of the current type of preferred instruction just from talking to them. Is that something that, you know, you all think, if we are looking at going back masking, if that's something that can be brought back?
I do, I absolutely do. And I know something was brought up as part of the public comment, you know, about those that were hearing impaired. You know, there are other things that you can do, other prevention strategies, having the plexiglass divider, things like that, in order to, you know, provide the instruction in a way that they can receive it and grow educationally. So yes, absolutely. I think, you know, with masks on, it will be safe to be able to be in small groups and things like that to benefit the student.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Glass?
Nope, that's all.
Ms. Springate?
I did have just a couple of questions. One thing I think that was very helpful and very proactive that we were able to do last year was to have a cleaning kind of crew come in and do some special cleaning in all of our facilities. Is it possible that we go ahead and plan on having that again for the next school year?
Are there any efficacy studies on that?
Not that I'm aware of, because we did that ourselves. We purchased the sprayers and did that ourselves. But we weren't in school
Floyd
there.
County
In Floyd
you did
County,
that?
yeah, we did that. We purchased the sprayers and we had custodians do that. I think we have some sprayers. Am I correct, Mr. Wells? We have some. So, we would have to look into the research, because I can't tell you about efficacy studies on that, simply because we did it ourselves.
I wondered about that. If it was, if there were.
There's a sign on the door out there that says that this building
Has
been
been,
disinfected as of 6/21/21, I want to say.
And I did notice when we were going through some of the schools the last week of school that outside some of the classrooms, it was noted that there were allergies to the spray, and it was a no spray classroom.
Oh, yeah, we did.
So I wondered if we had noticed any change in those classrooms, infections. Did that happen in those classrooms? If we could have that data, I hadn't thought about it until you brought that up tonight.
May I chime in?
Of course.
I just wanted to say, please don't change anything you all were doing last year. Again, we were able to keep the transmission rate very low within the schools. And the guidance last year just stated that you needed to increase your cleaning. Whatever you all did absolutely worked. The difference is this year we're going to be dealing with variants that are 60% more transmissible. And so that is a concern. So I would definitely keep with what you all were doing last year. I know they were doing some extra spraying because I'm also on site-based council at Southside. And so lots of effective measures were taking place sanitization-wise. And so it did work.
Okay,
Thank you for the input. And again, thank you for chiming in, giving us, your opinions, well, not necessarily your opinions, but what the guidance has been so far. So thank you, Ms. Prather.
Ms. McHale.
The only question I had was just maybe a clarification, Ms. Prather, on when we talked about masking for ages 12 and up, was that for unvaccinated children, or is the guidance that everybody, no matter the vaccination status, would mask?
I did listen to the governor and Dr. Stack this afternoon, and they did recommend, inside settings, vaccinated or not, needed to mask, because again, the vaccine doesn't guarantee that you won't get it, and we don't know now if you get it, if you can still transmit it, even if you're asymptomatic. Not enough studies have been done. We haven't been dealing with this variant in the United States as long as it has taken. We're going to need to do more studies. And so at this time, my advice, and I would go along and concur with Governor Beshear and Dr. Stack, that it would be my best advice to go ahead and mask, no matter if you're vaccinated or not.
And then I guess that would also follow through for quarantining as well?
If you are vaccinated and you've been exposed and you do not have symptoms, you would not be required to quarantine.
Okay.
And especially if you've been masked when the exposure occurred. So that would be key. So I mean, I have 5 kids in the school system. I want them to be able to go back, but I want them to be able to go back safely.
Sure.
And if this is what it takes, I think that's what we should do.
All right, are there any further questions? All right, thank you so much, Ms. Prather, for being available. I appreciate you coming. I know all the board does, and echo Ms. Richardson's thoughts in appreciating your expertise and you coming here tonight and working the long hours that you have.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we will move back now to the other agenda. I wanted to just be mindful of her time. We probably should have bumped that up a little earlier in the meeting. And board member communications. There were a couple of things that I wanted to share with the board. On July 8th, I was invited to a meeting for workforce development in Woodford County. There were several different groups there. A lot of the employers in Woodford County were represented: Yokohama, Airdrie Stud, Sheraton, which is formerly Quad Graphics, Ruggles Sign Company, and then BCTC was there, and Dr. Jones. Sorry? Airdrie Stud. That's the one I said. Yep. And they wanted to start a conversation on workforce development in Woodford County and see what opportunities the group could provide to try and fill the void and present opportunities for our students and for students at BCTC to seek out any sort of vocational opportunity pathways, it was a really welcome thing after the board collectively made that a point of emphasis in our superintendent search in looking for someone who would help develop these pathways. With the group that was represented, I was jotting down the numbers of job openings that they have, and collectively they said that they could employ 200 people the next day, that they have so many job openings. And our Mr. Asher was there, and Dr. Jones and Mr. Wells as well, and they shared that a concern for the school is to make sure that we're placing our students in things that will turn into a career, not just a job. You don't want to create a pathway that ends up in a job that doesn't allow for any advancement and development. And I know that's been something that we have talked about in the past, but it was a very positive meeting. They are really wanting to develop partnerships and to find pathways for kids. One of the things that several of them identified a need for welders and HVAC and small machine repair, things like that are things that we have talked about as a board. The resolution of that particular meeting was that they're gonna give us a screening tool that eventually Dr. Jones, Mr. Asher, and Mr. Wells can use as a screener that is already something that is required of our students. We have to do screening assessments to try and identify those areas of interest, and they had a new one that they were recommending from BCTC that is something that our staff is going to take a look at. But it was a very positive meeting, and I just wanted to share that with the board. And then also the other meeting at the board office, which we recapped earlier. So I don't know if anyone else has any other board member communications that they wanted to share, but I did want to share that with all of you.
I would like to say really quickly that the partnership with these businesses and with BCBS, CTC is very important, and here's why. Because whatever we offer, we need to be able to go ahead and extend that for dual credit through our community college system. And that's where students will get those credits again that'll go towards whatever pathway they do choose. And one of the things that my goal has always been is just like with lacrosse. Let's provide the opportunities and let students, we don't know what's going to catch their eye, what's going to make them be successful, what's going to make them go to work, but it really won't be work. Those types of things. So let's provide as many opportunities as we can.
All right, thank you.
I just have a quick follow-up to that.
Sure.
I'm sorry to ask you for everything on your first day here, but I do think it's important, and we've talked about getting some data and some information on what actually is going on right now for Woodford County kids. Mm-hmm. So is there any way we could get like a report, and it doesn't have to be special session, just maybe at the beginning of the meeting, just about what opportunities our students have, what certifications that they're doing, where they're doing those programs, and just kind of a rundown on those different things, just number-wise, because sometimes we just think, oh gosh, everyone's doing that or no one's doing that, and it's just so much better to have the actual data and the information so that we can, just make sure that we're kind of just fully understanding.
Certainly,
it.
and a little bit of that conversation started with Mr. Howell and myself at the meeting with the architects and engineers. Just simply, what do we offer? Do we certify in that pathway, and those types of questions? So yeah, that should be pretty easy to get.
Vocational numbers, that kind of
yes,
thing.
as to what we travel. And last year was a tough year on vocational numbers simply because state would very seldom let them open last year because of COVID. So we had that. We
could go back a few years too. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe go back, the last, 5 years, and then just kind of look at those numbers and kind of see. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda, and we do have a need for an executive session tonight.
Did you want to talk about the district budget?
Did I miss that?
Yep.
Oh yeah, we did.
Thank you. There's one more discussion item. I apologize. The formation of a district budget committee. That's something that we had discussed that we would like to create, and I would love to hear what board members' thoughts are. I had, I think, mentioned to you all that I know different districts do it differently, but one district that I had talked to, they have their meeting immediately prior to board meetings, and they have one board member who's appointed to the committee for the year, and then the other 4 board members rotate in 3-month increments so that everybody's getting access and learning about those things in a little bit of a deeper dive with Mr. Martello and Mr. Atkins prior to the board meeting. Just a way to learn more about the budget process, and kind of the way they do theirs is, here's, we've allocated X for the utilities fund, and at this point in the year we have spent 60% of it. Those are some of the things that they go through in their budget committee, is kind of where they're at on that target that they have set on the budget, which we all know the budget is a living, breathing document that is changed and updated. But I do think as a bare bones structure that might be a good way for us to get started. And I wondered if Mr. Adkins, if you or Mr. Martello could reach out to a few different districts.
That's what I was going to say. Can we get an opportunity to reach out to a few districts and see? But I love the idea of everyone rotating on and off. It gives them an opportunity to see exactly what the budget looks like, what the budget process, how building a budget is done, how staffing takes place, because that's part, not just personnel, but budgeting as well. I think that's a great opportunity for our board. So yeah, if you can give us an opportunity to reach out to 3 or 4 districts that have a budget committee and see, and
I think
probably even KDC has that information. Well, they do a lot of surveys. So give me a chance to reach out, and I'll come back Monday with that information. Okay?
And I think if we could ask them for the charge for their committees so that we could see, exactly how they set that up, if they could email that to us, because if it's a district committee, I'm sure they've got it all lined out. Ms. Springate, any thoughts on that?
The only thoughts I would have is that I just feel like the budget is such an important thing, and it is ever changing, and it is so insanely complex, that what I would like to see is just, if we have those meetings once a month before a board meeting, that we just notice it as a board meeting and all 5 members can be present, so that you're not missing out on, if you're doing things during 3 months where there's really, little to nothing going on, you wouldn't learn as much or be able to understand or participate. And again, it wouldn't have any effect on the per diem, because the per diem would be for that meeting anyway, since we're already there. That might be something that would be an opportunity for any member that's interested to be able to come and participate.
Well, and I think conversely, any member, if it's a public meeting, has the opportunity to attend, and just as a spectator, you would still be able to do that if you chose to, even if you weren't in one of the seats that was rotating through.
I just think probably to be able to participate, and then also just the public perception, it would make more sense if it's before a board meeting, just to allow, all members to be present and participate in that committee. That's just, my thoughts.
Ms. McHale?
I think we should hear what the other districts are doing before we actually make a decision on sort of who, what, when, and how we're gonna do it, but I think it's imperative that we do get something done well before we start the budget for this year, and I would really like to focus it, and maybe it's just semantics, but it's not just a budget committee. It's an operating expense committee. It's a financial committee.
Yep.
That would deal with ongoing issues, and my hope would be help with some of the items, or at least understand in more detail when things like ESSER comes up and things like capital funding and big projects. I think that it's a really good opportunity for us to get ahead of things, get the budget back in balance, and get our operating expenses transparent and something for everybody to understand. And I think that extends beyond just the 5 people sitting here on the board. I think that the community needs a piece in that as well. So, thank you.
So I will have that information, and
Okay.
as soon as I get a couple of different ones, I'll start shooting those to you in an email. Is that okay?
Ms. Richardson, any thoughts?
No, I'm good. I just look forward to seeing what you figure out. Take a look at it from there.
Ms. Glass?
Yeah, no thoughts until we just hear from other districts. I'm anxious to see what, kind of get an idea before we, since it's new, something new for us, to get an idea of what other folks are doing so we can kind of form what works best for us.
All right. And now we really might be at the spot where we go into executive session. Mr. Chenoweth, which KRS will we be using to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the evaluation of the superintendent?
It should be the 618101K for closed session discussion that's mandated by state law, and the superintendent evaluation statute is KRS 156.557.
Okay, that is not listed on our agenda as one of the executive sessions.
It doesn't matter. The executive session is the 8101K, but the state law that mandates that closed session happen is 156.557. That's just informative, that part is just to inform the public which state law we're saying requires the closed session.
All right.
Can I ask just a quick question before we do motions and voting? I went to a training this past weekend on superintendent evaluation, and I know last year we did this in open session, and in the training they seemed to indicate that you would do general discussion in open session, that you didn't have any legal right to do things behind closed doors unless it met certain criteria. And so I guess I just wanted to double check with you on that before we go into closed session. What we were told and what we did last year was that just discussing the superintendent evaluation tool and the goals was something that was appropriate to do in open session, but that if we were discussing a specific performance issue or question with the superintendent, that would be the grounds for closed session. So I just wanted to clarify first.
Sure. The answer to that is it's still not real clear from when the General Assembly changed that part of the law. All they said as to superintendent evaluation was any preliminary discussion by the board or between the board and the superintendent prior to the superintendent's summative evaluation shall be conducted in closed session. And what preliminary discussions regarding the superintendent's evaluation really entail has not been explored by the Attorney General's office. It's not been explored by litigation. Some of that certainly as to just what the district's goals are and what you're working toward. That's public session. That's public discussion. It's not really part of the superintendent evaluation, but telling the employee, the supervised individual, what your expectations are for the year. Your policy requires you to discuss that with the employee within the first 30 days of them reporting for the school year. And that is, I believe, within the shall be conducted in closed session language of the superintendent evaluation statute.
Okay. Are you good with that?
Clear as mud, thank you.
I could see where the tool in general would be public, but as far as identifying specific goals, I could see that being personnel.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101K?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Glass. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, there will not be any board action after the executive session. All right. Is there a motion to return from executive session?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. Glass. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McHale. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. The meeting is adjourned.
Real quick, you guys want to see something cool on Thursday? I think they're having field day for the last day of summer school.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm going to go over and spend a little bit of time. I think
tomorrow?
it's